Mr. President, we are live.
Very good. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the September meeting of the LCTCS Board of Supervisors Executive Committee. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the meeting is being live streamed. With that, I will turn it over to our here to call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Jackson will call.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to call the meeting of the LCTCS Board of Supervisors Executive Committee to order. And we'll begin with our pledge of allegiance, and I'll ask you to provide the order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is established one nation for all. Thank you, sir. Before we begin, for the purpose of today's meeting, I've appointed supervisors Ellen Ward and Stephen Smith and Stephen Smith to the executive committee. Final Sarah, you can call the roll.
I'd be happy. Supervisor Mount is joining us by phone. Supervisor Jackson.
Present.
Supervisor Roman Hardy is absent. Supervisor Paul Price is absent. Supervisor Tim Hardy.
Present.
Present. Supervisor Michael Murphy is absent. Supervisor Ellen Ford. Supervisor Stephen is not here. Supervisor Stephen.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a forum on this day.
Sarah. First order of business I have with approval of the meeting agenda for September 1st, 2022. I ask for a motion to approve the those minutes of September 1st, 2022 meeting agenda.
Mr. Hardy. Second. Smith.
We had a motion to approve the minutes, to approve the agenda, excuse me, for the meeting. Any discussion? Any questions?
Hold on one second. I understand that they're not able to hear us on the.
Did she not hear anybody?
Ms. Mount, can you not hear anyone?
I can hear you, Sarah.
Just
I can hear Sarah.
pull your microphone close so that
Yes.
Sharon can hear and also we wouldn't.
Either small or microphone, or a little.
I think it's the setting.
I think it's a setting.
Yes.
Any objection to approving the minutes? There's no objection. The motion passes. Next item is the motion to approve the May 11, 2022 meeting minutes. So it's not a motion. Move by Supervisor Martin.
The motion by Mr. Hardy and second by Mr. Smith.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of May 11, 2022. Any discussion? Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passed.
Mr. Chairman, can I pause for a second? Ms. Mount, can you hear us now?
I can hear you, Sarah.
But you cannot hear the chair.
It's only picking up from the speaker here. So I have Daniel coming down to fix the,
Say, if we could, just to pause for a second for a quick recess, so we kind of get the technical details squared away.
Sarah, should I try to call in again?
No, ma'am. Just hold on for 1 second. We are live on YouTube and we'll keep that going too if anyone is watching on YouTube.
Okay.
We are the
Okay.
sound corrected for everyone.
Okay.
And we'll note for the record that Mr. Hardy Roman did rise. Ms. Mount, and for anyone watching, we're gonna reset the audio source online. Give us just a second.
Picture was shown. I fixed this time.
Mr. Jackson, can you do a test?
Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Ms. Mount, can you hear him?
Can you hear me, Willie?
Willie, are you still on?
Did you hear me? Yeah, I can hear him better now.
You can hear him better now. Okay.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Can you hear Chip yet?
We're out of recess now, and you're okay.
There is an
If she can hear.
That's all good. Well, with that, Mr. Chair, we'll turn back to you. Okay, thank you. Our next item is item F reports, report of the chair. And my report is the following. Just want to remind all the members, all of our board members that the LCTCS conference is next week at the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans, beginning on Tuesday, that changes the date. And I certainly hope that everyone can attend and participate in some of the. With that, I'll turn it over to Rita, Dr. Sullivan for the presentation. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on the bridge. I'll be brief on the report this time.
All of 2022 enrollment numbers are starting to come in frequently. We're not quite to the 14th last day for all of the colleges just yet. But at this point, as of this morning, we're down from the fall 19 pre-pandemic to fall 22 by less than 5 percentage points. Folks, I gotta tell you, if you told me we were gonna be down less than 5 percentage points in this term, I would have called you a lot. There's just no way. I couldn't imagine how you could make up that ground in that period of time. But our folks absolutely just gone out and worked their tails off to get students in classrooms. The good news is I think we will also see a continuing increase because several of our colleges are now moving from a 16-week semester to an 8-week term. That 8-week term means that in about 7 weeks, we're going to see yet another round of students enroll. So we very well could be even with the fall 19 enrollment overall. One of the areas where we are seeing a little bit of slow catch up, if you will, is our students are taking fewer credits. The likelihood is what this means is students are working more hours, and because jobs are available and money's available, taking fewer credits, that's something that we may have to adjust to across time. But that's a really important element for us. Most of the time our colleges are about 9.5 credits per student. That number is starting to slip now, closer to 8. So if you think about that, cost is based typically on a head count. Revenue is generated with student credit hours. So when your credit hour per head count goes down, there's a bit of a challenge. Nonetheless, all positive news in terms of enrollment. Very excited to see the numbers come in at the level that they are now, and we'll continue to keep you updated. Welcome, Supervisor Toops. The second item I have for you is just a little bit of a temperature check. When you think about the conversations going on around the state right now, there are huge workforce needs that we are hearing about daily. When I say hearing about, I don't mean just sitting in meetings and hearing people talk about. I mean folks on the phone with when can you get us more, right? So you have a conversation around healthcare. Said, healthy Louisiana meeting on Monday, folks monitored, we're down 6,000 nurses. Can you give us 6,000 nurses? 6,000 is not a small number. I shared with them some of the work that we've done of practical nurses for Oregon, about 100 new Oregons in the market. Given what the last 8 months, I suppose, his response was 100's great, but I need 1,000. So that's the perspective that we're hearing from industry over and over and over again, particularly in the healthcare sector. Fast forward to broadband. Yesterday we're in Alexandria. Broadband is the discussion everywhere you go. Who's going to lay the fiber? Who's going to connect the fiber? Who's going to monitor this network once it's in place? There were probably 400 people in the Bentley Hotel yesterday. I don't know that the Bentley's seen a combined 400 people over the last 2 years, but boy, they had traffic yesterday for sure. A lot of folks in downtown Alexandria, all focused on broadband and our chances in the room with a whole host of providers, both ISP providers as well as the folks that do the installation. So our college is right there in the room with the folks that are going to be doing the work and hiring folks to make sure it happens. There were a number of chances that came in yesterday and talked about. We essentially came to terms on the deal with the provider, just right there in the room yesterday. That's the way it should happen. So a great deal of thanks to Benine, who is our state's broadband director, and also to the team that put together yesterday's conference. It was quite a success. The third item I will mention to you around demand is around the infrastructure projects. When the federal government rolled out the infrastructure dollar, they failed to include anything that would provide for. I'm sorry, here. They failed to include dollars for training around infrastructure. So what we have recently came to realize is our CPRA efforts in Louisiana are going to present a huge opportunity for us to move some dollars into the infrastructure training bucket, if you will. If you look at what's going on with the redirection of silt from the Mississippi River to rebuild coastline east of the Mississippi River, what we're talking about there is essentially about 12,000 direct jobs, and much of it being based out of St. Bernard and Plaquemine Parish. As you know, there aren't 12,000 people in those two parishes combined. It's a relatively sparse population. So there's a lot of work to be done to ensure that we have the people to be prepared, operators in particular. Heavy equipment operators is the focal point. You're seeing a lot of that work going on at our colleges now, and that is largely as a result of the infrastructure efforts. So in those three fields, any one of those in any 1 year would be equivalent to what we did with the industrial construction effort that resulted in the CURT award. And we are being asked now to do that in 3 fields. I just want you to put that into perspective, because it's where we are as a country right now in terms of being able to find talent. It is a just incredible demand market. The thing that I think is important for us to keep in mind, and for this board to keep in mind, is the bandwidth of our colleges has historically been one major initiative at a time, focusing on one group like industrial construction. Now, when we're asking them to focus across 3 different areas, this is where it's going to get really interesting. I have every bit of faith that our chancellors are going to grab this thing and run with it. But I want to make sure that you know that we are asking them to do something that is well beyond what we have had to do in the past in terms of the production levels. Yes, sir.
And the 3 are?
The 3 are healthcare, broadband, and then the infrastructure, all the jobs around infrastructure that particularly are civil in
They
nature.
add industrial construction back in, so you just, and the what's worth now.
I knew for sure you were going to say that, because you're right. I mean,
I brought you the grass.
the level of capital investment that our corporate partners are making right now is creating a boom in that industry that looks a lot like what's going on in healthcare and in the other infrastructure pots. So it is a crazy demand environment, which says to us, for our colleges, there's greater demand than there's ever been, which is great news. The challenge is the bandwidth side of it. We have to find the people to be able to deliver on these, and we'll continue to do that. But just very proud of the work that our colleges have done to get enrollment up to a point that solidifies them financially. It gets us through this next few months and really begin to focus on those 4 areas now. 3 plus 1.
Thank you.
Very good.
Monty.
Yes, sir.
And again, first, just to thank our colleges. I think it was not too long ago, when you were talking about 11% down. And to be from, I don't know, 2 weeks and to be only 5% down, that's amazing. In terms of all that we're asking our colleges to do we have the manpower? Do our campuses have the manpower?
I think the answer to that question is not right now. So I'll give you an example. We're working on an initiative now that would create somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 LPN to RN slots. So in other words, these are go to a campus in, I'll use Bill Platt as an example. We have a practical nursing program there, but not an RN program. How do we create 20 slots in Bill Platt for an LPN to RN that can accomplish that in about 10 months? All right. When you begin to think about that one campus, now replicate that 20 times across the state. What we're asking people to do is to stand up and take on another 400 to 500 healthcare graduates, which is going to require about 20 to 30 new faculty. And so the dollars that are flowing out from the state for the 25 million for healthcare is going to be instrumental in that. But we are working closely with our partners, particularly the big folks in the market, our OL as well as Oxnard, to work with the nursing board. The current requirement of a master's degree to teach nursing exceeds the requirement to teach in med school. Let that sink in. You do not have to have a master's degree to teach in med school, but you need one to teach nurses. Why? Because of the nursing board. Because of the nursing board. That's exactly the answer. So we have gone to the nursing board. We petitioned them to at least get flexibility to allow bachelor's prepared individuals to teach up to a certain level. That's the only way we're going to get there, because there are not enough master's prepared nurses to go around. So we're going to continue to push the envelope on several policy fronts. We did have a proposal that we took to the practical nursing board. Today, every campus that has a practical nursing program is considered separate and standalone. So SLCC or BRCC doesn't have one practical nursing program. They have a practical nursing program per campus. And the board says you've got to have an administrator for that program. So the biggest expense of that program is the administrator at every campus. So we've got 53 practical nursing administrators. And guess how many students they teach? None. So we're trying to find a way to reduce the number of administrators, increase the number of faculty, and produce more students at the same time. You get the sense this is not an easy task, but it's one that, you know, I'm convinced we can get this done. Really proud of the work our campuses are doing at our college. Thank you. Very good. Any other questions? I'll come back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Monty. Item G, general action items. Supervisor Smith will present the facilities action items for consideration by the committee.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. First one is our capital outlay request for next year. Joe, you want to take that?
Yes, sir. I'll be taking all of them. So we brought before the board at the June meeting, as we do every year, preliminary capital outlay list for your consideration. And at a subsequent meeting, we bring forth the final list for recommendation to the Board of Regents. And the way this process normally works is every higher education management board will go through the process as I just described. They will submit their final list to the Board of Regents, who then will ultimately take all 4 lists from the 4 management boards and compile them into one list for recommendation to the State Division of Administration, Facility Planning and Control for consideration into the subsequent year's House Bill 2, Capital Outlay Bill. So with that said, again, we brought before you the board at the June meeting, the preliminary list. At that time, we had roughly a little over $600 million in projects. In this final review, in discussions with the 12 colleges and their chancellors, and I'd like to commend them for their involvement and participation, we've whittled the list down from a $600 million ask to a $500 million ask. So down by 1/6. With that said, we are bringing forth, still continuing with, I believe 12 continuing projects that we have in House Bill 2, in addition to a list of new projects that will be going forward. And just to name a few of those, we have at the top of our list the Winsboro project, and after that, the BRCC nursing project. Livingston campus is a new project that kind of started last year, and we're moving that forward. And another one that is of note is the SLCC has an aviation initiative taking place in Iberia, and they're wanting to expand that campus in conjunction with work from LED Fast Start and others. There's a lot of synergy taking place, so we want to put that on the list for consideration. And lastly, Supervisor Smith, we do have a small ask to help with some of the projects we have at Delgado that are Act 360 related, that we're running into some financial considerations given the costs of construction, which has since doubled since Act 360 was originally proposed. So hopefully that will provide some relief. With that said, staff will recommend that the board approve the 2023-2024 capital outlay list of recommended projects and authorize the assistant president to make any technical corrections to the request that may be necessary prior to the final submission to the Board of Regents.
There's a recommendation. Do we hear a motion in a second? A motion by Tim Hardy.
There are still having audio, so I'm gonna go through everything. And picking up here. It doesn't look like these microphones are projecting.
Okay.
Supervisor Tim Hardy, there's a motion.
A second.
A second by Roman Hardy.
His brother Roman, right? Twin brother.
Hardy boys.
Each other.
That was so right there. I mean, you couldn't resist it. It was right in front of you. That's right.
I was ready for it. Even two things.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any questions? The Stevie twins right over here talking about y'all.
And Supervisor Smith, I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Smith arrived prior to him.
Yeah, just in time to make a bad joke. We thank you for coming. Stevie's pickle the Hardys. Do we have any questions about this first motion on the agenda that we can't seem to get through? No questions. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion carries. The next one has to do with getting rid of some property for Suella. Joe, you gonna handle that one as well?
Yeah, this is correct. I am. This is you may have seen this one before, and in fact, we have at the June 2020 meeting, the board took action to dispose of this property. Unfortunately, the motion was very specific in terms of who we were disposing it to, which was the city of Jennings, which is not the case in this situation. What has happened now is since then, it has been occupied, leased to Christbridge Academy for the last year for instructional purposes. That lease has ended. We have been approached since by another institution to purchase the property. So we are bringing before you this board item for that action. The person has been in consultation with the chancellor and is willing to pay full price, obviously appraise the value of that property. We may enter into a lease with them temporarily while we work out the paperwork for the actual sale, which may take 1 to 2 months to get done.
Okay.
So with that said, staff recommends the board authorize the president and the chancellor of Suella Technical Community College to negotiate and execute all documents necessary to dispose of the former Jennings site through sale, lease, transfer, or trade for another property. Lease or conveyance documents for this potential disposal must be filed with the local clerk of court and the state land office.
Great, we've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion and a second? Move.
Motion by Mr. Roman Hardy, second by Mr.
Okay, any questions on this one, board member?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just a quick note. This item was really the timing issue for and reason for this executive committee meeting, because you got a group of young folks that are trying to go to school, a group that is trying to get into the facility. We wanted to make sure that we weren't the hold up for them. We weren't in a place to sign a lease agreement. So thank you for your willingness to be here today to make sure this item moves forward.
Any other comments? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. Third one is a 959 project at Suella. Joe?
Right. So just to give some background on 959 projects, this is a venue by which colleges and universities can bring other than state general fund dollars, either through donations, grants, gifts, or other sources of revenue, federal funds, to do capital outlay projects under $5 million, basically in-house by having to go through the capital outlay process. As part of that process, you go before the board, you get approval to move forward with a project. It goes to the Board of Regents, who then acts on it as well. Ultimately, then it will go to the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget for approval. And after it goes through those 3 steps, it's then pretty much received by facility planning and control to manage those projects as state projects. We have 2 of them before you today. The first one is a project from Suella, who is planning on using $2 million in her funds and $160,000 from hurricane relief funds to basically redo their HVAC systems in the Charleston building. Before this, SLCC did something similar with some HERF funds, some COVID dollars, where they in fact went through and redid the HVA systems in their campuses for antiviral type measures, where there was UV lighting and things of that nature. They saw that as an ongoing benefit to the students going forward, even once we get past COVID. In this case, so well as actually replacing the entire HVA system, which is about 20 to 25 years old. So as such, staff recommends that the board authorize the system president and the chancellor of Sewalla Technical Community College to complete all requirements and execute all documents necessary to use Act 959 process to fund the replacement of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system in the Charleston building at the Lake Charles campus. Approvals from the Board of Regents, Facility Planning and Control, and the Joint Legislative Committee on the subject are required for this process.
Great, heard the recommendation, do I hear a motion in a second?
Motion by Mr. Booth, second by Mr. Roman Harding.
Okay, questions from board members on this one? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion carries. Same thing for Fletcher, Joe?
Correct. For Fletcher, they are in the process of gathering funds, private donations from companies and individuals to augment the precision ag training facility, which is currently at FPNC in the planning stage. Hopes are that they will raise up to $3 million in funds. They don't have them as of right now, but the intent is to get permission to allow for an up to $3 million renovation of that, or in addition to, not renovation, but addition to that project, to build out additional space for heavy equipment, machinery, diesel engines, retrofitting and repairs and things of that nature that kind of fits into the whole precision ag field. So staff recommends that the board authorize the system president and the chancellor of Fletcher Technical Community College to complete all of the requirements and execute all documents necessary to enhance the precision ag project using Act 959 process. Approvals from the Board of Regents, Facility Planning and Control, and the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget are required for this process.
They picked up $100 grand last week.
Correct, they did.
Function with us, somebody donated $100 grand for this, right? So it's good.
Yes, sir.
We've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion in a second?
Motion by Mr. Tim Harding, second by Roman Harding.
Okay, any questions?
By the good looking side of the table.
Now we, so you notice they had to separate us too. You notice
I see
that?
the Stevie's in the heart.
Right.
As noted by the Stevie's Wonder.
It's the Stevie Coalition. Any comments or questions? Any objection?
No, not about this particular motion.
Let's do 10 more.
No objections. This motion carried. Ellis is wondering why he's on this board. I didn't get involved with this group. Mr. Chairman, those are all action items I had.
More of a general comment. I was thinking about President Sullivan's intro. It's great to hear about the rebound and student enrollment. But these focus areas where people are really asking for assistance, I wonder if there's a need for capital review set to rebalance the focus to speed up. Any
Great question, and there are, the question is, given the focal point that I mentioned in the present report of healthcare and some of the other areas, industrial construction, should we review the capital outlay list with that in mind? And the reality is that many of those facilities, and I'll name SLCC as an example, you have a healthcare facility there that was built by Act 360 funds that was largely a result of, we knew we needed healthcare employees. The issue that we have now is that facility large enough, right? We're back to a capacity question. So what I'm asking the group that is working on our LPN to RN effort is help me to understand the capital needs that we have. There will be a couple, in fact, you'll see them there, a continuing project at Baton Rouge Community College for a health campus. You know, we're in the midst of building out the Act 360 project at Delgado right now. That's $31 million worth of healthcare space. So you're absolutely right. We got to take into account what is existing. The issue that I think we're having right now is it's hard to imagine what that scale looks like because we haven't been there before. It is probably 5x from what we had done previously. Just to give you an idea, that's where the demand is at this point. It's serious. I do want to point out one quick thing, and it relates somewhat to your question. We are experiencing some of the highest numbers in construction costs I've ever seen. The latest one, as of a conversation this morning with the folks from CSR, is $518 a square foot. So there are two pieces to that that I think are really important for us to keep in mind. Number one, the dollars coming down from the federal government are gonna buy less as a result. In fact, half what we have right now, maybe half. Second point I want to mention to you is the rules that are in place for things like the 959 projects, they begin at $1 million. So any project that is $1 million or higher, it is $1 million, right, Joe?
5 million for 959.
5 million. So the
Now,
question.
there are
becomes-
things, the $1 million, things that we can do in-house without
Right.
approvals.
But the question becomes, does the threshold that was set in dollars in prior years, given the fact that we have an escalating cost that's more than double, should we be reviewing that number, and should it be a $2 million and a $10 million threshold instead? It makes no sense for us to be in a place of having to be bogged down by facility planning control. They have a limited number of program managers. There has never been as many projects to manage in Louisiana as there are right now. So why would we be in a position of being at their timeline? It probably ought to be closer to a timeline that we're looking at. It's going to make us have to make some really hard decisions. Do we spend $518 a square foot right now? Or wait and see what happens with the market? So it's a tough call.
Depends on how fast you want something done. Because chillers in that are taking 2 years to come in. You get a price on it, it's good for 7 days.
Right.
And you better order it in that 7 days. So if you're looking for a project to start in 2023, and equipment doesn't show up to 2024, how do you plan that?
Yeah.
Okay, and the price is going up on everything and anything around it. I'd like to tell you it's gonna come down from what my contractors are telling me. It may, but they don't know when.
All the same thing is, kind of time to market stuff as it is, but it's sort of just, you have two big components that's driving inflation, is energy costs and sort of labor supply chain shortage. I would have told you before Russia, but the energy side would have was normalized. Now nobody knows. And I don't think the supply chain's done anybody near shortage. So I think you just have to move forward. It's the point that I know you have to rationalize. So I don't think you can try to time it. I just think it's too globally uncertain.
You have to make up your mind that you're going to do it, and then do it, and then your timeline's a mess, trying to figure it out. You have to leave that up to somebody who knows what's going on.
Thankfully, to this point, one project, probably among the Facilities Corporation projects that's kind of been delayed as a result. But outside of that, we've had some pretty good luck, I think. But we're beginning to see that come to a screeching halt. We have a project ongoing now in Lake Charles where the contractor can't get folks to show up to work. They just aren't there on the site. And so we continue to have dialogue with them to try to continue to push, but just finding the resources, I think, is one of the biggest issues. We'll come back to the board at the next meeting and talk a little bit further about the construction budget.
Inflation also, I mean, we can see it's Stevie sees against the world. Industry is not going to defer North America because it's now the market fundamentals are not anywhere in the world. So they're deferring in other parts of the world. But those projects are going to go.
To your point, right? Investments are happening. Yeah.
Great discussion. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item, and thank you, Supervisor Smith, for handling facilities. Item H, other business. Is there any additional business to come before the committee? Hearing none. I just want to remind the committee that our next regular meeting of the board is October 12th, 2022. It will take place in person at the regular meeting location at BRCC and will be in conjunction with the board's strategic planning on October 11th, 2022, which will take place in person in this building, SIS building, first floor conference room, this room. Are there any other announcements to come before the committee? Hearing none, I request a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're all adjourned. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Sorry to rush in and